I also hope this is context, the things I hope for. Oh, well, I think the fact that we might have reordered that. This is, I guess, 3. Yeah. All right, sir. Yours just moves down 4, 5. Yeah. Good, how are you?
Oh, I think I'm doing that. You guys tell me.
Test 3, test 4.
We'll call the meeting to order.
John, do you want that check station?
Yes. Where are you, by the way? You're virtual people.
This is Vicky. I'm on.
Jerry, I'm on. Can you hear us, Don?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you and Vicky, but we're still looking for Aaron.
He's not with me.
He's not with Vicky. Okay. Is he with you, Jerry?
No, he looks like he's on though.
Oh, okay. Maybe he's on mute.
Doesn't look like, I'm not sure. It doesn't look like he's muted, but, oh wait,
His
his
lips
audio is
moving.
not showing up. The audio icon is like blank.
Well, all I can see is the virtual board meeting will begin shortly. I can't see any of you, so.
Okay, so is there any way to contact Aaron to find out where he is?
He is muted and he has to unmute himself, so we're trying to do that.
Okay. So you just let me know?
I called in on my phone so that I could talk and so I could hear better. And maybe that's what he has to do.
Right now he is
Just
on
a
as
suggestion.
Okay. So do you want to wait then or proceed?
I'm just texting.
5:30. I think we
I-
can wait.
Yeah, I think if he's on and trying to get through, let's let him get through here.
Yeah, he said he
Aaron
texted
says
us
he's here.
here and
Oh.
can hear.
So he's just muted. But when you call in on the phone number, you have to, it automatically mutes you and you have to unmute yourself. It's not, you can mute yourself and unmute yourself, like it mutes you and so you have to unmute yourself. So it sounds like that's the scenario he's got, if he can hear us and can confirm that, but can't talk.
Yeah, he's texting us, so.
So I would, if I was Aaron and he could hear me, I would say unmute yourself, but then hit your mute button on your own personal cell phone and then just use that, do it that way. Because originally when I was doing this one time, it was like, Joe Deutsch has muted himself. Joe Deutsch has unmuted himself, and people are all giggling in the room. So I figured out,
I'm here.
hey, it's Aaron.
Hey!
Pound 6. Literally, I called in and it said, to unmute yourself, and then, a hand dryer went off in the bathroom, and I'm like, what? What did it say? I couldn't hear it. All right, I'm here.
Okay.
Now, do I hit pound 6 to mute myself again, or
No,
can I just
hit the
can I
mute
just
button
mute
on your
my
own
phone?
personal cell phone.
No, I can just mute myself through that. Okay, sounds good.
Your
And I
own
might
personal
lose
cell
you
phone.
here. Yeah, I have to drive now somewhere, but I'm good where I am now. So if I lose you, I'll do my best.
Okay, do we have everyone? Okay,
Yes, Madam President.
let's go, let's start again. So we have everyone here, and either virtually or in person, and we're going to take a look at the consent agenda. I think there was a change in the order. Is that
Yes,
right?
Madam President, we would like to move agenda item number 5 up to number 3, and then that'll complete any changes.
Okay, do we have approval of the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda with the revision.
Do we need a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so I assume all in favor. Ooh, there's another voice.
We had 6 votes now.
You want me to,
Yes.
call
We
a
have
roll?
to-
Yeah.
It's tough without him here. So Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. So approved. All right, we'll move on to the regular agenda. We're going to recognize the public, the audience here. Those who have signed up to speak need to be given a little bit of advice, the rules. So we're happy to hear your comments and we welcome you. We ask each speaker to sign in. When you come up to the podium, you need to state your name and address for the record. We ask that the speakers refrain from criticizing or complaining about the park district. And the board is interested in listening to your comments, but we are not obligated to respond. If you would like to go further than this meeting, you can send a written statement to a specific question if you have one. This is a short period of time, but this evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. If you would like to speak later, having to do with one of the agenda items, you need to be recognized by the board president, who is me, and before coming up to the microphone. Okay, and we ask that you respect this request and act accordingly. So this is the time when you can come forward, state your name and address, and make a short comment. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, anybody want to speak?
Madam President, Paul Noah and Jordy Christian here on behalf of the Angels and the Fargo Freeze, and we attended a number of meetings over the last month, and including the facilities meeting last week, and really excited to work with the park board on this next phase and reintroduction of some of the components of the sports complex. And excited, particularly from our perspective, the 2 sheets of ice and getting the basketball courts and other programs in that facility. So Look forward to it. I've enjoyed working with the staff so far and the commission, and hopefully we can get it to the finish line. So thank you. Just wanted to briefly address the commission.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll proceed to the director's report.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam President. We will start with the director's report. To my right, Brock Leitz, our finance director.
Thanks, Dave. Madam President, members of the board, a few quick updates. The Human Resources Department is excited about the fact that we'll be welcoming a new member next Monday, Julie Heder. She will be a new HR generalist joining us and really rounding out the HR team as we had discussed getting that filled. And so she'll be on board next week. Also, speaking of HR, Stacy Kruger and I reported this in my weekly recap last week, but I just wanted to get you up to speed. You know, we've talked about doing some review in the form of a total compensation study. And so we've talked to a consultant out of the Twin Cities that I'm familiar with and has done a lot of work with public entities in this area, just to get kind of an understanding of what it might look like to do that. Stacy, that's Gallagher and Associates. Stacy and I have reviewed their information and are discussing kind of what the next steps should be and if we would have to put that out for an RFP and where we would go with that. And as you recall from our retreat earlier in the year, that really is a conversation about looking at not only our compensation, but really total comp to include benefits and things of that nature. So we're in that process of reviewing that and trying to determine what the best steps are moving forward. We are in the process of planning for the retirement of Chris Creech in the accounting department. She will be retiring the end of August. And so before we have another board meeting, she will be working toward that. She's had long quality service here at the Park District, and we'll have an opportunity to recognize her, and we'll make sure that that's out so people know. We'll do a little social in this room once we do that. And then really the final piece is the work that Luke and I have been doing since our last facilities meeting about the preliminary budget. We're going to talk about that tonight. There's a great deal of time and effort that went in with our bond counsel, our financial advisors, to really talk about the options that are available to us, and then those discussions really drive our preliminary budget, which has to get to the county next week. And then that is lays in wait for final approval in October. So we're just trying to do that work and put those pieces together, and we'll have that for you to approve this evening as well. With that, I will stand for any questions if anybody has any.
Hearing no questions, we'll move on to our next director's report. Will be Dave Beets, our Parks Director.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just wanted to give you a brief update on some of our larger projects so you have an idea where we stand with those. If you remember, we bid out earlier this spring a rather large, extensive concrete trails project, and in that there was also some parking spaces at Lindenwood, some shelter slabs around the community, and things of that nature. So that project is going really well. The shelter slabs are complete, and those are at Centennial and Woodhaven South. The larger trail projects we're working on is at Stonebridge 1 and 2. Stonebridge 1, the concrete is being poured this week. Stonebridge 2 is being formed and finishing up removal of the old asphalt this week, and then formed later this week for hopefully pouring concrete next week. So those are progressing nicely. Also, if you remember our playgrounds, we're doing 2 playground updates this year, one at Westgate Park and one at Willow Park. Westgate Park is underway currently, and that should wrap up in the next 2 weeks. Then we'll move on with that contractor over to Willow Park, and the goal is to have everything done right around mid-September with those projects. Another project we have that just started right after the 4th of July is the Brunsdale pickleball expansion. That project is well underway. We're doing the earthwork there right now, and they're forming that up. So that too should wrap up late September, early October, once we have those 3 courts added onto that. In addition to that, we're starting really with heavy coordination right now for the Osgood Slope project. If you remember, that project is a rather extensive project on 2 of the holes at Osgood. to repair some of the faulting slopes out there. We had always planned that that project would start late September once the golf season is starting to wind down. So right now we're beginning the real crunch time of the preparation of making sure that we have that all coordinated and ready to go once we hit our window of construction. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on those projects or anything else you might have in relation to the Parks Department.
All right, hearing no questions. Thank you, Dave. We will move down the line to Brian Arrett, our Valley Senior Services Director.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening, commissioners. Just a couple items to report on. First of all, with respect to the Park District Foundation, a week ago, we received a verbal $1 million pledge for the sports complex. It's by a person, I'm sorry, I misspoke, for the Island Park pool. A pledge of $1 million towards the Island Park pool. It's by a person who is a partner in the sports complex, has gifted us for that project as well as this project. We're meeting with him and his wife next week to get documents signed. So hoping to get that one sealed. With respect to Valley Senior Services, tonight is budget time. One of the significant events that happens for Valley Senior Services around budget time is a presentation that we do to the Cass County Commission. Cass County levies $1 million for senior programming. That's matched by the state, 87.5 cents on the dollar. It's a big part of our budget, a $2 million request. Met with them last week and they approved it. So that's pretty exciting. It goes quite a ways towards helping us make our $6 million budget. So great news, good news department. May as well celebrate our wins. And I'd be happy.
I think it's because you're wearing the sport coat that day. So next time you want money, wear your sport coat.
I smiled a lot too. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I would just
Brian,
like to ask.
those are both big wins, and you're right. We should celebrate the positive things that happen, and it's nice to have partners like Cass County and get the state match.
Yep, I agree.
I wanted to ask about your budget in that there has been a lot of stimulus money available and other types of federal programs. And I think we mentioned previously at another board meeting that you couldn't really speculate, or it wasn't easy to speculate as to how that was going to increase, decrease. Are you concerned at all about that with your budget?
You know, we didn't budget for the stimulus dollars we received, so that was kind of a bonus, and it made it easier for us to keep up with the growth and demand for our services. We're not budgeting for any stimulus dollars in 2023. You know, so it's kind of a stable budget, if you want to call it that, in terms of the federal funding that we receive for nutrition. If there are some dollars that become available, you know, certainly we'll spend them.
Sure.
But our budget is not built on the receipt of, you know, bonus funds like that, if you want to call it that. And we're pretty confident in the budget we put together that it's achievable, that it will meet, you know, the needs of our programming right now. So the stimulus dollars, on the other hand, are still being spent. We're still spending them, and they'll probably run out in about October this year. So that has been a pretty good boost for us programmatically.
Okay, and then as far as the management of your program and your budget, is it necessary for you to write grant applications on a regular basis?
Well, so we do receive grant funding, and it's a little bit different from, I think, what you're referring to. We received grant funding from the state of North Dakota for our nutrition program and for our transportation program. Fairly consistent funding, you know, and the application is not guaranteed, but it's pretty certain that we're going to receive those funds. We write some smaller grants as well, but nothing, you know, that approaches the $1 million we received for nutrition or the $750,000 that we receive for transportation. So $10,000, $50,000, $70,000 grants of that nature. Our program is secure enough that we don't have to rely on those grants, you know, to pay for what we do. On the other hand, it enhances, or it makes it able for us to enhance what we do from time to time.
So the state and the federal government, you don't really need to spend a lot of time at those kinds of applications. They're more just a regular repeat of what you've done in the past. So you don't have to go through all kinds of fancy language and applications and descriptions of.
Oh, we still do the fancy language, but they're fairly secure. There's no question. And I think the work for that, as with anything that the Park District does in terms of funding, the groundwork happens throughout the year. You know, the communication we have with people in the state office lays the groundwork for us to consistently receive those funds. So as long as we touch all the bases and make people believe that we're doing the great things we're doing, we're successful.
Sure, and as long as you spend the money, right?
Oh, we spend it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian. We'll move down. Next to Brian is Carolyn Botain, our Enterprise Director.
Commissioners, last weekend, Courts Plus had the Red River Junior Open, which is different than the Red River Open that was earlier in July. This is for our young people that play tennis. We had 132 participants, and that is the most that we've ever had. So it was a large tournament, weather cooperated, and lots of fun for all. Yesterday, we had a new member of the marketing staff start, Kylie Conwisher. She is starting in, has come to us with some graphic arts and other great skills that we're looking at enhancing the marketing that we do. And then tomorrow, Yunker Farm Master Plan RFPs are due at 1 o'clock, and we've received 3 so far.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Kevin will be our last presenter. Kevin is our Recreation Director.
Good evening, Commissioners. Our department is excited to bring on another staff member, Pace Meyer, who's to my right, is starting in our events department. So he started on Monday. So he started with training. So it'll be a great addition to our staff for the events department. Our summer programs are unfortunately wrapping up, which means we're rolling into registration, fall football, flag football starting actually next week. So that's a good start. Signage, our golf course signage is complete. The Coliseum signage will begin this month into August and September, so that should be done plenty of time for the ice to go in. And then at Southwest, as you remember, the Cornerstone Bank agreement, that signage will be completed on October 15th. So those are some big milestones that'll come up for the signage and the recognition for the Park District. Couple events that are coming up, or bigger events that are coming up, is the North Dakota Senior Games, August 17th and 18th. And that'll be at various locations throughout Fargo and West Fargo. And then the Island Park Show will be here at the end of the month, the 27th and 28th at Island Park. So well, that would be update. Questions?
I just would like
Kevin.
to ask if how you feel about the Island Park show in terms of the maintenance that's required or afterward. Do you have a mess, or does it come back together quickly?
It comes back very quickly. We work with Dave Beats and his team, the operations side. So great help from all departments to get that park back in shape.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Kevin, do you have any details on our last hurrah at Island Park Pool?
No details at this time, but they'll be coming out shortly. Dave and I just talked about that this morning at our staff meeting, so more details will be coming out.
Great.
All right, thank you, directors, and that concludes our director's report, Madam President.
I believe our next item is number 5. It has been switched up to number 3.
Correct.
So, Madam President, the Fargo Park District Foundation Board met last Monday, a week ago yesterday, and considered 2 proposals, which are included in your packet. One is from Fargo American Legion Post 2. Some renovations that they want to do to the infield at Jack Williams Stadium. They want to level the playing surface, install some new sod. They also want to do a little bit of an upgrade in the first base bullpen, installing new turf, portable mounds, and improving drainage. So their request is for a $15,000 grant, which is the maximum amount that we give. It's a $30,000 project and one that they'll do yet this fall if approved. The second applicant is Nicholas Dawson. Nick is here tonight, and he is a Boy Scout. He wants to do a project at the dog park out by Shields Arena, which will include in adding ways for dogs to enjoy that park more, including adding some ramps and hurdles and things in the park for the dogs to run up and jump over and of that nature. It's a $2,600 total project. He is asking for a $1,300 funding from the Park District. Both of these projects were reviewed by the Foundation Board, and they are recommending that the Park Board approve them. As I mentioned, Nick is here tonight. Nobody is able to be here from Post 2, but he would be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Nick, you want to come up and tell us about the project? Is this your Eagle Scout project? Okay, very cool.
All right, as I said, I'm Nicholas Dawson, Vicky Dawson's son, and I'm adding things to the Brant Crossing Dog Park. It's next to West Acres, or not West Acres, but Shields Arena. I was going to do the one by West Acres. It's called Village West, but we switched it over. I'm adding 3 hurdles in the small dog park, ramp for them to jump over, and then a shade house for them to climb on, and then for them to also go under. And then in the big dog park, I'm adding 3 hurdles, 2 things they can go over. It's called the bridge ramp, and then 2 shade houses.
Very cool. So how did this project come about? Like what made you think of it? Are dogs passionate to you, or have you been over to the dog park and observing how bored these dogs are out there, or what?
Well, originally I was going to do some dog dishes, but I found that kind of lame. I kind of wanted to challenge myself, so I wanted to build something. And I wanted my dog to play on it because I love my dog.
Anybody else have questions for Nick?
Well, I have to tell you, Nick, I stalled out at the life badge, and a lot of people stall out, never get their project done. So I'm very excited for your project, and I'm proud of you that you're getting it done. So I look forward to seeing it. You're talking about the one by, is it B and G? Yeah, B and G. Yeah. So
Just south of Shields.
So that dog park is literally 200 yards from my house, and I take my dog over there all the time. So I'm super excited to see how it comes about. So congratulations.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
So that's my proposal. There is a sample motion in your packet.
And Brian, do we want to split these 2 projects up, or what did we come to a conclusion on that? So
As far as the motion, you mean?
yes, so Vicky can abstain on the one.
Oh, correct. Thank you, Dave.
So maybe want to just break these into 2 individual approvals.
Yep. That's very good.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion on, let's see, the first one, the Jack Williams Stadium match?
So I move to approve the Foundation Board recommendation to provide a matching grant funds in the amount of $15,000 to Post 2 Legion Baseball.
Second.
Do we need to call the roll?
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
Thank you.
So then we'll move on to the second one, the presentation by Nick for the dog park. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion very similar to Vicky's language, except for it's in the amount of $1,300 to support the total project cost of $2,600 for the project at our dog park.
And a second,
Second.
roll.
Commissioner Dawson? I believe will abstain.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosted?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Passed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, so then we're going to move on to number 4.
All right, thank you, Madam President, and I would just like to check with Carolyn. Do you know if Doug Whitaker is on the line? Okay, we were hoping that Doug is flying between calls, and we were hoping he'd be on the ground in an airport somewhere and he could join us. Doug is the pool consultant with WTI. We do have Tony from Zerberg, who is the lead architect on this project. And we had a very thorough presentation at our Budget Facilities Committee meeting last Wednesday. And we did have our stakeholders meeting and public open house on Thursday. And I think one thing Doug mentioned to me was this was a very good turnout for an open house on this stage of a project. So he was pretty impressed with the citizens of Fargo, and they got out and were able to view it. So we got a lot of good feedback. The agenda item on this one, commissioners, is to approve the scope of the Island Park pool. And what we're looking for is we're through schematic design right now. And I think we've talked a little bit about the 4 phases of a project is pre-design, schematic design, design drawings, and then construction documents. So with this scope of work and the renderings that have been attached in the board packet, this completes the schematic design. And what we are looking for is consideration by the commissioners on the scope for the project. Currently, right now, after our public input and commissioner input and staff input, our scope includes a 50-meter competition pool with diving well, a lazy river, a zero-entry leisure pool, 1 fly time slide, and 1 tube slide. And the slides would be exiting, as shown in the rendering, from the same deck. And hearing public feedback and commissioners' feedback, we did reduce the height of that tower, the takeoff point, from 45 feet to 35 feet. So
And that changes the experience in no way whatsoever. It just changes
Correct.
the angle of the slide, but they still.
You don't quite
hit
get
the
as
end.
much speed, yeah, but you still get the same effect. And so we will open it up for any questions that you may have from the staff or Tony Wolf from Zerberg, and then consideration for the scope.
So surprisingly, I don't have any questions, but I would like to just make a couple of comments. I had a few staff who took time out of their weekends to talk to me, and as well as Doug from WTI to take some time to answer my questions and give me some information about the project we're doing. And I just appreciate that extra time and energy they gave me to help me feel comfortable about the project and be able to wrap my arms around a better understanding of what we're doing and what it's going to provide to our community. So thank you to all of you.
Yeah, I was able to make it to the meeting on Thursday, and I was unbelievably impressed. I was unbelievably impressed with the layout and how people were available to answer questions and stuff, and how people got greeted in the door. But I was impressed with the turnout of the people from the community and their engagement. I mean, they came in, they were they were asking questions, they were circling the room, introducing themselves to people, telling, what their true interest was, whether they lived in the neighborhood, whether they lap swim at noon every single day, all summer long, or whatever. And they weren't afraid to give their input, and they weren't, they shared their concerns. They shared the things that they really liked, and they appreciated the fact that that we were gonna do it, and that we were gonna do it right. And so I can't say enough about how much better I felt about the project after Thursday night.
We've also had about, I'd say 10 to 15 online that they've either messaged Dave or myself asking questions. So we've replied to those emails as well.
Oh, what was the content?
They couldn't make the meeting. They wanted to understand, the slide more about the deck situation, the canopies, the umbrella situation. So it was a little bit of all over the board, but they're very good comments.
Okay, I was just going to ask too, when we had done the surveys and the polls regarding what people wanted, I'm sure the slides were part of that. Can anybody speak to that, what the outcome was?
Yes, the slides were commented on in that survey. And Carolyn, we had a very good, I have that sheet up in my office. I believe the top 3 or 4 components were competition pool, diving boards, lazy river, and slides were the top 4.
That's correct. Yep.
Feedback.
Okay, another question I have just on a personal level is that at the last meeting, we talked about all of the commissioners were in favor of eliminating the slides. And then since then till now, then it seems like it's shifted to the other side. So I was just wondering what the process was there. Was it the redesign or the lowering of the tower, or do you know, Joe?
I think, that's a fair question. I think it started with, we had concerns about the height of and what effect that might have on other experiences within the pool, right? And so when it was proposed at that meeting, we didn't really get an answer. Some of us were like, well, then we won't have the slides, and some of us were still looking for answers. And so the staff then went back to the drawing board, talked to the designers, and figured out a way to bring the higher deck that was at 45 feet down to 35 feet with this one. And then we eliminate a lifeguard as well, because they can watch both decks. And then, as you saw, Dave went around with his camera and took a picture from multiple different locations in that general vicinity. Now, I know that it's, when the trees are at their fullest point, but regardless, kind of showed us the idea of what 35 feet was going to look like. And what's the original facade's 30 feet out there right now?
Oh, the facade, the old hockey lobby facade is 30 feet.
30
the light
feet.
poles are 25.
So, and then they came to the meeting on Thursday night with the rendering showing it, and you and I got a chance to talk to people and get feedback. And so I think my concern has been addressed. I didn't want to necessarily get rid of the water slides, but it's not even just the height as much as it was the concern for and value of making sure that blends into the environment down there as much as possible, right? There was a time when you were driving in on I-29 before everything developed, you could look to the right and see that big yellow slide at Davies from the interstate. Like this is not going to be the case with this slide. That's not what we're looking for downtown in Island Park. So.
Okay, well, I'm just oh, go ahead, Vicki.
Sorry, Don. So I think each of us might have different reasons and different things that brought us to this conclusion, and some are probably the same. So for me, it was once I saw it and had the conversation, having more time to have a conversation with Clunt and talk about staffing and how he felt the slides would impact us from a staffing aspect and also from a user aspect. And one of the things for me that has continuously been a concern is how will it impact the casual user of the pool, the person who maybe wants to swim a lap, wants to just be relaxed, might want to go around the lazy river but not get slammed into by some kids. And so a lot of those answers came in conversations I had. For example, with the competition pool, we have the ability to put a couple of swim lanes on that east end. So someone who wants to swim laps can do that and not be impacted by the fly time slide or the tube slide. And there's obviously going to be some casual usage as well in that competition pool. And so I feel comfortable that anyone who goes here can have any number of experiences without being imposed on by someone who wants to go down a tube slide or wants to use a diving board, and we've maximized our space. I truly appreciate that we have saved a significant amount of money and can provide more by utilizing the existing building and remodeling that building to suit our needs. So I just, for me, it's just more of understanding better what's coming and how it will impact our community, and knowing that our community is gonna, whether it's the neighborhood or users from far and close by, that they're gonna feel comfortable and be satisfied with the experience.
I would just like to comment, and looking at it in this overview, and then coming from the pool house, where is the primary entrance? Is it on the east side of the pool area?
And maybe Tony can step up to the mic, and I believe the coming up to the entrance of the pool will be on that south side. As you see that walkway coming up is what they have planned now. They really haven't took a deep dive into the design of the pool house.
Yeah, that'd be the main entrance from the parking lot, the park side.
Sure.
From the pool deck, we're looking at the main entrance of most of the children coming in there, basically south of that slide tower. It's kind of where we're
I think
gearing
one of the
towards.
keys Doug talked about is they like the young children to enter towards the shallow water versus the deep water, and then they've got to make their way over to the deep end. So it's not the first thing they see. So I think it would be more towards that southwest side.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, well, one of the things, and looking at this here is if that entrance to the whole pool area were on the west side, it seems like you'd be walking into kind of a carnival-like atmosphere with the slides right there. There was some talk that night, Thursday night, when the designer was here, about possibly wrapping that around and putting some more green space to the west. Is that still a possibility?
Yeah, definitely. We have a lot of time here yet that we can shift things around and work things around. So we're going to be entering kind of into more of a design development. We've identified our general scale and scope of the project, and now we'll be moving into kind of some of those finite details where we can adjust things and move things around a little bit. So yeah, pulling that around to that south side where there's some seating right now was one of the options to get some green space in the middle there.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And Lance Bergstrom also mentioned that green space, that there's so many nice turfs that you can get now. That would really be, I always think about it like when you enter somewhere, you want the grand scale. You don't want a barrier. You want a view of something that's really inviting. So in looking from wherever the entrance to the pool area is, I think we need to consider what the view is. So if it plays into moving the slides around a little bit, I think that might be smart.
Yeah, definitely. Something we'll be taking a look into and reporting back to you guys.
Okay.
Hey, this is Aaron. So we're just approving kind of this high level design concept, correct? That's what
Correct.
we're doing tonight, or what we need to do tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, and then all kind of those more finite details of the entrance or the fence and those things. We'll be able to approve those down the road.
So we're approving the components, right?
The
Correct.
5 points
Correct.
basically underneath what they're saying there. So
Okay, well, I'd like to ask Jerry if he'd had some comments or questions.
No, I'm pretty good with everything. I think that some of the questions that were good questions last week, Thursday, and, I think if, we had some time to get those questions addressed ahead of time, we probably would have been fine with it last week. But, it's a new week. We went through and got some of those questions answered. We did make some elevation changes to those slides to make it more palatable and comfortable. And so I'm ready to go. I do think that one question that was hung out there last week on the community room for the pool, the more I've asked about it, it seems to me that maybe as we move forward with the design that if we're going to have a community room for Island Park, that's different than a community room for the pool. And maybe what we want to do is think about, expanded locker rooms or facilities that or a room that would be of benefit to the pool because it doesn't feel like it's capable of serving as a community room for the park. And we can flesh that out as the details come together.
Yep, I would, to piggyback on Jerry, I would agree with that, that pool building, make it functional for the pool, get the locker rooms you need, the areas you need. And as I asked last week at facilities, as part of Island Park's plan, adding a community room or some other space to the east that can be used for seasons or for the rest of the park usage, I think makes a lot of sense.
So we are planning on putting public restrooms in there that will be available to other people in the park. Is that right?
Correct. That's part of the current program.
Good.
And available 4 seasons, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Because that's been a big concern of patrons, is that there really isn't a good place for anybody to go to the bathroom while they're in there, so. Well, if nobody else has any further questions, comments, or whatever, I will move to make the motion to approve the scope of the Island Park pool project as presented with those 5 budget or line items, and then we will get into the details as we move forward.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Passed. So let's see now, what do we have next?
It would be
Number 4?
new item, old item 4, new item number 5.
Okay.
So we can move forward. So this is board to review and consider approval of a initial resolution providing for the issuance of general obligation park facility bonds. So commissioners, I'll give you a little background on this, and I'm going to ask for a little backup from our finance director to my right. There's been a lot of discussion over these last week and couple days that I may not get everything straight, so I'll ask Brock for some backup. At the facilities and budget committee last weekend, we were discussing phase 2 of the Fargo Sports Complex, and we were talking about a bond issuance and trying to decide on at what capacity that would be for. And upon lengthy discussion, we haven't kind of consolidated on a scope of what that phase 2 project would be. So we talked with our bond, and some of the discussion at the facilities committee meeting was to max our available capacity, debt capacity, just so that gives us as much flexibility as possible moving forward. Because as we've discussed, you can always lower that limit down, but once you set it, you can't go up from there. So we talked with our bond counsel, and due to the nature of printed press nowadays, they only print the paper on Wednesdays and Saturdays. They had to get that notice for the bond issuances into the paper on Friday, and which would come out tomorrow. So in working with our bond counsel, we set that max debt capacity at $34 million. And so we just want to let all the commissioners know that will, depending on the outcome tonight, that is what will show up in the paper in the legal section tomorrow. And what it will say is Fargo Park District to issue debt not to exceed $34 million. So we can always lower that, but we can't go above it. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. Upon further discussion between last week and yesterday, we were discussing the scope of this project. That initial scope of the project for the $34 million included $1 million in our general fund, and that was for the entire scope of phase 2 of the Fargo Sports Complex, which included 2 ice sheets, 4 basketball courts, 2 community rooms, a playground, birthday party rooms, and 3 generators, I believe. So that's where that max capacity debt service originated from at 34 mills. Upon discussion with commissioners, we've had another option for a lower debt capacity of, instead of 34 million, of 28 million, which would reduce the scope of the project. And we'll be discussing, that once I complete my presentation. So that is option number 2. And then option number 3, after discussion with commissioners, would be to do nothing at this time and continue doing our homework on site planning, estimating, agreements with user groups, reaching out to other potential partners. It was listed in the budget facilities packet, the 10 items to consider. So we have those kind of the 3 options to consider tonight. And what is going to drive these options is what we decide on for the scope of phase 2. So with that, one option for the debt capacity is 34 million, 28 million, or 0. So did I miss anything, Brock?
Can I just ask the question of the difference in that? What is, if they go with a lower amount, 28 million, what is being removed that's cost 6 million?
So yeah, and just different conversations with different commissioners. That one option would be for 1 sheet of ice, 4 basketball courts, 2 community rooms, and 2 generators. This was the initial scope of the Fargo Sports Complex project, and due to price escalations, we ended up phasing the hockey, the ice sheet out for phase 2. And then we also had the additional basketball courts and community rooms as add alternates. And due to price escalations, those were not chosen at the time we awarded the bids. So that was one option for 28 million. A second option would be for 2 sheets of ice, 4 basketball courts, and 2 generators. If we can, I don't know. Yeah, depends on private funds on the generators, but that was another option in that debt, 28 million.
Okay, I don't know if this is in order or not, but Dave Noah was shaking his head back there. Would you like to comment?
Me?
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm sorry, maybe I have your name
Oh,
wrong.
Paul Noah.
Paul,
Oh.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just had.
I don't know if I'm commenting now, it's just for on the ice sheet side of it where it's critical from our perspective on the 2 sheets of ice. So I would just strongly suggest that, we've got the youth organizations that have really worked hard together and committed to continuing to do that. I think we can create some energy with the sheets of ice and get the basketball courts done. That's been the focus of our perspective over the last 60, 90 days. So it's the 2 sheets of ice. Every once in a while say, well, let's do this and add a component and then take down a sheet of ice. I don't know if people are just dangling the carrot in front of us, but I feel like we've been consistent. We've got commitment, financial commitment for the usage, and for the out of the gate to help defray the costs. And so I think, but it is critical for 2 sheets. We've got 2 organizations that are committed to using it. So that's my 2 cents on some of the comments, that Dave presented, the options.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
So I would like to ask Aaron, what is his perspective on this proposal? I know you have to go somewhere, so I'm thinking.
Yeah, I've got about 5 minutes. So
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my kind of general view of it is kind of, let's kind of do as much as we can now. I think we put ourselves in this position a while ago where we kind of were trying to scale back, and now here we are going, okay, well, let's re-add. And so I think from my standpoint, it's kind of maximize it, and if we can maximize it and make sure we're not just adding sheets of ice for hockey or ice sports, but we're adding more courts and pickleball courts and community rooms, and it sounds like the generators are important as well. So I think I kind of am going to come at it from that end of it is kind of while we're in this building and production phase is, kind of, or at least start with this sort of, on the one end of maximizing it all. And then as we get through the next 60 days, kind of seeing where the chips fall and then kind of go at it from that standpoint. So that's kind of where I come in. And yeah, I do have to probably head out here in about 3 minutes just for everybody's reference, but.
Thank you, Aaron.
If I can just jump in this, Jerry, and my grandson is in the background here, so I apologize, but the last, when we talked earlier, Dave and I and Brock and everything, I thought we would be looking at passing, the $34 million bond at this point, and then, I'd be in favor of dialing back to something less than that, but at this point, we'd get this secured, and then we would look at what we would dial back to. We really didn't talk in terms of package A or package B. So I'm a little bit, do we have to decide on the package now? I thought we had the opportunity to look at that over the next 45 days.
Yeah, commissioners and Jerry, you're correct. The key is how much we would choose to indebt the Park District for, and then subsequently that indebtedness comes with a mill levy increase from a preliminary perspective. And so regardless of what actions the board takes tonight, the public notice that will come out will be up to 34 million. If the board takes different action tonight, meaning what Dave has recommended, or not recommended, what Dave has suggested came to us in feedback was, if the board were to take action on approving a resolution for 28 million, then that carries the day because your board action and your vote is what the 60 days is on. At that point, you're operating on 28, regardless of what the paper says in the morning. So you really need to, I think, resolve where you want to be from a debt capacity standpoint. And then you have the 60 days to determine whether or not you will stay at that number or something below that number. And so, I think because of legal requirements, statutory requirements, print deadlines, it had to be published at the maximum of 34, but you could take a different action today and still determine scope down the road. If you choose to take action on a resolution of 28 million. I have a copy of that for you here, and you could scope the project to fit within that $28 million piece. So you've got lots of flexibility. The key is, what resolution are you approving that starts the clock of the 60-day notice?
I would just like to comment that in talking to Brock earlier, that if we do this mill levy, that we have to spend all of that money on the sports center, the items that we have in the proposals. That's a concern to me because I'm concerned about the rest of the Park District. And I would really like to see some equity between the different enterprises that we're about. I have interest in many things, and I just feel that it's jumping forward very quickly. Now, one of the things that we could do, according to Brock, is I think that's the third option, to do a study and then at the end of that year, put it into the budget for next year. So we would be more than able to do that. Is that correct?
Commissioner, Madam President and Commissioners, yes, that is correct. You have that option in front of you as well. And as you state, the approval of the general obligation bond series, they're very specific for how they were written. And as we were directed coming out of facilities, we wanted to have a bond resolution specific for phase 2. If that passes, you can only use it for phase 2 of the project. You cannot divert those dollars to another place.
But can't we take the mill back that's currently been moved over there to get us to 60/40 to get the shovel in the ground? Can we take that back and to where it came from?
Yes, commissioners, if you have all the funding, you can do that. This portion really has nothing to do with the funding model for phase 1. Phase 1 has that bridge loan and the commitment of the current 1 mil from the general fund that is needed to complete phase 1. If new private dollars come in to offset those costs, we can recoup that general fund mill that you're discussing. But as what happens here is really not going to affect what happens with that unless there's new private dollars that come in to offset it.
Now, one of the things that we talked about earlier too, and have been talking about for some time, is the last time we did this, it was for the sports complex and for Island Park. So in this case, we're only talking about the sports complex. Whereas if we waited a year, did a study, figured out what the public wants, there may be another project that we could do with those funds. And so I just, really think, well, just because we can do it now doesn't mean we necessarily should. And I think the concerns of the Parks District having projects delayed to go forward and just do it because we can, that's always a mistake. And in speaking to you too, Brock, in terms of debt and debt service, I really think that, I never personally want to go into debt unless it's for a good reason, and certainly not at any risk. So I just wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, commissioners, Madam President, commissioners, you're right. And I did express to the facilities committee from a pure fiscal responsibility standpoint, I felt more comfortable with conducting a broader study and identifying needs and maybe needs throughout the park district and really giving us more time to determine, what kind of private dollars are out there, not only for this project, but phase 1 and other things. So yes, there is a philosophy about taking on debt and what that debt capacity is. And if we go to the 34 million, we've really taken the maximum debt allowable today. Now, the offset of that is we're very fortunate that we live in a growing market and we've seen significant growth happen. And as you pay down debt each year and as the valuations go up, you're going to increase your debt capacity annually, but that's going to take time, right? You're not going to have all of that on the front end. So, I tend to be conservative by nature, although I certainly appreciate, as I stated at the facilities meeting, I want the greatest facility in the upper Midwest for all purposes to serve the community of Fargo. I also want to do it in a responsible manner from a debt and ability to pay standpoint. And the fact that we've been leveraged the way we are was the concern that Luke and I shared with you. That being said, you asked us to find a path and are there funding sources to do it? And we presented you that opportunity. Some of you have said it must happen with new money if it's going to happen. And that's what we presented you. And that's why we presented the maximum amount. If you take a lesser amount, then you have some capacity in the bank to go back with later if you choose to do that. So that's kind of the broad overview of your question about the fiscal responsibility and what the concerns were that we discussed.
All right, well, I just have to come forward and say that what I would do, my recommendation would be to do a study and then maybe find out if there are members of the community that would like to include some other things that we could. I mean, we've got our fingers into so many things right now that I would like to see developed, like the strategic plan for Island Park and for Yunker Farm. We're still considering Lindenwood and what's going on down there. We have the maintenance issues that would be delayed if we went ahead with this debt. So my perspective is, as I told Dave Leaker this afternoon, I don't see why everything needs to go into this one place. We've got a big city here. We've been trying to help the north side for a long time. Why is it that, all of this money is pouring into this one project? And I just see it as one project because from, as I was mentioning last time, that I see the Park District as having a lot of obligations to the public. They aren't only for sports, but they're for so many ways in which people can enjoy recreation and culture, the arts, all of those things are attractive to more people. I mean, to me, to fit, if you want to fill out the spectrum of everyone we have that we're serving and those people who are also paying taxes, you want to find out what they want. So if we're talking only about the sports complex, I think we're really leaving a lot of people out. And that's the reason I'd like to see a study and to revisit this throughout the year to find out where we really do want to spend our money instead of having to commit to the sports complex and all of that money having to go there. So begin back to the last project, the sports complex and the pool. At least we got the pool in there. You know, I'd be very unhappy if we didn't. So why can't we think in a little broader spectrum?
Well,
So
I'd like to jump in
piggybacking off of, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in, Don. I understand where you're coming from. I can appreciate the comments that you made. The sports complex started out as a big picture dream, a vision, something that would be iconic for the city of Fargo, something that could draw people for jobs and draw people for spending their recreational dollars. And we've got a lot of support from around the community on this. CVB has been on board with us. They want more courts. Hockey has been to us. They want more ice. I think the demand signals are there, and we could have, this was the original vision that included ice and additional courts and some of the other stuff that we've been talking about. So we scaled back at one point to try and be budgetary, fiscally conservative, but at the same time, the pressures for these activities and these venues haven't dissipated. And so when we were approached by the ice people and the hockey people, and they had 6 million that they wanted to get us going, that's an opportunity that I think we have to take serious. So I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, this meets the vision that we set out for with this the sports complex.
The other thing I'd like to say is, I'll be short. You know, how many additions are there going to be? Originally, how many phases were there? I mean, are we done if we do this? Are we done with it? And then we can move on to other things?
Yeah, I think, well, the complete build out of the entire sports complex is built out for 2 indoor turf, 3 hockey sheets, 12 basketball courts is what the original concept was.
Okay, do we have to go the full way?
No. What he's trying to say, Don, is that that it was designed like that to allow for that growth, knowing
For
that
expansion.
in 20 years, we might need to add more of these things. It would be impossible, whatever. You can't add onto the Fargo Dome right now. That's problematic. They would have done it by now if they could have, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Not in the scope. I think if we get to the point where we have a full Olympic size soccer field of turf that nets can be dropped down to section off and do 6-8 different sports indoors in the winter. There's a walking track around there that services the general public. We've got 8 basketball courts / volleyball courts with suspended nets in the ceiling that you just have to open up the metal pieces on the floor and lower the nets down, and boom, you can run basketball tournaments and volleyball tournaments all weekend long. Like they do down at the Pentagon, which has got to be a part of the funding model to keep this, open. And you get your 2 sheets of ice that we talked about 1, we talked about 2, we brought it down to 1 in this original phase, but they've said that they have the need to. They're going to sign a contract that guarantees that they're going to occupy every hour of that time, and they're bringing cash to the table. And we have a senior population that is going to obviously use the indoor walking track, but we have no indoor pickleball courts in this community. And while they're not sitting here complaining right now, I've talked to the people that are out there playing, and those that aren't going south for the winter would absolutely love an opportunity to come and utilize the sports complex in their way as well. And so with the party rooms, I mean, we've got our offices out there. There's no reason for years and years to have to come to the table, in my opinion, and ask for more out at that complex. I mean, I just, and if I hear what Jerry's saying is that we can still spend the next 60 days figuring these details out if we just go with what's in print right now and say up to $34 million, but not to exceed, and does not obligate us to that number, correct?
That is correct. I think it needs to be slightly broader than that from a standpoint of the next agenda item, which is our budget, because what's presented to you in a preliminary budget also has an increase in the general fund mill as well as the debt service mills. And so there needs to be a general sense of what's your comfort level when we present the preliminary budget. Do we present it as the packet suggests with a recommended 4.55 mil increase to cover $38 million in debt service as well as potential broader scope? Are we going to bring that back to a smaller debt service amount and eliminate the increase in the general fund mill? The concept that one of the options that was discussed is if you go to $28 million in a bond resolution, that might get you a scope that is different than the full scope that costs $47.7 million. All of that is required on the front end of the preliminary budget. And so that will be step two once you get here, because there's two parts that are driving that budget, if that makes sense.
So now that Brock clarified that, I would just like to say that I do not favor increasing the general fund mill. I would like to leave that out of this. And so what the dollar amount is without raising the general fund mill is the dollar amount that I would like us to use as a max.
Which is?
As it sits today, the maximum would be 34 million in debt service, and that would require 3.55 mils, and then we would back off that 1 mil in the general fund.
I agree. We've already discussed the fact that we took their mill to make the bridge loan to get us in the shovel in the ground in the first place, a mill that they went through a lot of work to justify and rationalize things such as deferred maintenance, which are horrible things that you can put a Band-Aid on at the moment, but just make the situation worse when it finally exposes itself. So I want to make sure that our staff, gets that, however that works, because I'm not the money guy, but however that works, that needs to be, that situation needs to be rectified. And I don't want to put that stress on the staff or the, the general budget. I agree with Vicky on that. So it sounds like that's where Jerry was at. That's where Vicky was at. That's where I could be at, that 34? Is that right? Am I understanding what they both said and what that number is?
I know what you said, and I know Vicky said reduce the general fund mill. I don't know that Jerry weighed in on whether it's 34 or 28.
Well, he said, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he said that we could start with the 34 now so that we don't have to necessarily figure out the exact scope at the very moment, and with the notion that in the next 60 days, we'll figure out what those pieces are. Jerry, is that what I heard you say?
That's exactly where I'm at. And with the intention that we're going to dial it back, we just don't know the exact numbers.
Okay, so just to clarify, if we do not take a 1 mil increase in the general fund, what is the dollar amount that we would be issuing?
Commissioner Dawson, are you asking the dollar amount of debt potential issuing?
So, yes, of the bonds, general obligation bonds, what is the dollar amount if we do not increase the general fund?
Up to 38 million, and the general fund increase does not affect that bond issuance because that's a separate mill levy increase. So up to $34 million.
Just to clarify, you've said 34 several, but you just said 38 a second ago, then you went back to 34. So-
34.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
juggling numbers.
No,
here
I
because have
understand.
to change the
But I
budget
just
on the
know that
fly.
everybody in the room heard it, so I just
Yes.
wanted to make sure it's 34.
Up to $34 million.
Okay, so.
Which at present day is 3.55 mils. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and that would be increased mills, not from the, not for the from the general fund or allocated to the general fund. Or
That is
accounted
also,
for in the general fund.
Yes.
yep, that is also correct. And I want to make sure we're all clear. And you said it, Vicky, very clearly. Present day 3.55 mils, because two things will happen. One, the county has to finally certify the actual valuation in October, so that could change slightly. Two, we don't know what's going to happen in the interest rate environment between now and then, because the interest rate has changed significantly since last week when we had this discussion to today. And so I just want to make sure everybody's clear that 355, if you issue the total 34 million, could be more in the current interest rate environment.
So you're saying that the current capacity is 34, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so if that's possible this year, you said that was what is available this year. What would, if we did this, what would be available next year?
That is unknown at this time, but the math of that would be whatever increase there is in the total property valuation for the entire city of Fargo divided by 10% is what you have the ability to levy. We would then have currently, if we look at the resolution, if we went to that capacity, we would have zero capacity today, and we would only have whatever the valuation grows next year. If it grows 5%, you would have whatever the total is minus our outstanding, and that's the
So it
difference.
would be the 34 million plus whatever the growth is.
Yep.
Okay.
No, that is not correct.
Oh.
The 34 million would now be consumed. The only capacity you would have is be whatever the growth is next year.
I see. So in either case, so if you didn't take advantage of it this year and you waited till next year, you wouldn't know what the capacity is.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I misunderstood your question. If you do nothing this year, yes, it's 34 plus the growth. If you do the 34 this year, it's only the growth.
I get it. So then that means that then we would only have, if we wanted to go into further debt, we'd only have what would be new. And so the 34, is that new this year?
Not all of it is new this year. Last year, you had capacity, when we passed the general obligation bond last year of $44 million, we had capacity of $63 million. So we passed 44, so that left us with 19 million available. 19 million has grown to 34 million. And the reason for that is you had an 8.3% increase in valuation this year in the city of Fargo.
I see. So that means that actually by going forward with this, we would be limiting ourselves into projects that we'd be able to begin next year with the mill levy.
If your intention is to finance those projects with general obligation debt, yes.
Okay.
Meaning raising the mill for the sake of those projects as opposed to finding it within the current budget and or increased valuation or pre-funding it for the purpose of getting it done later. Yeah.
Yeah, well, to me, I haven't been involved with this process with the sports complex, but most of you have. So it seems like you're taking really a lot of money that would be possible for other things. I just, I don't know. As I've said, there are people who really would like to see more outdoor recreation, particularly winter recreation. There are so many things the city could be doing to support, people who want to do other things rather than go into a building and do whatever they do. So that's my perspective. I just think that using this capacity limits ourselves to what we can do even by next year.
So I don't disagree that we shouldn't necessarily take the max. That's one reason I don't want to add a mill to the general fund and limit us. Another thing to keep in mind is doing this does not limit us from doing anything else, because every year we have a capital project budget. For next year in our preliminary budget, we have $5.3 million set aside for capital projects. That includes a lot of different improvements throughout the community. In addition to that, we have projects that we are currently paying for example, the North Softball Complex, the Davies Pool. And as we pay off those debts, that brings that money back to us for the future. And so new projects can be developed. I do understand the concern for making sure we're taking care of the entire park system. That's one big reason we made sure we could get the Island Park Pool project and the master plan for Island Park and the master plan for Yunker Farm, and taking care of some of the things in Lindenwood. I think, we all recognize that we've got a lot of different things we need to manage and take care of, not just one project. And I think I can safely say that there's not a commissioner here that doesn't look at the entire city when they make decisions, and how is this going to be good for the community as a whole, and even the region as the largest community around here. So I don't think we take this lightly. I do prefer that we don't take the max. I am more comfortable with the 28, but I understand that we have the time to come to that if we need to as a group.
One other thing is that, is it possible that, the publication date is obviously of great significance since it's 2 days from now, and so you can publish this in the forum, but you don't necessarily have to go forward with it. Is that right? So what if you publish this in the forum, and then how does the discussion go after that?
So what happens with the publication is the statutory requirement is you have to have a 60-day probationary period, and that probationary period has to pass before you make a final decision. In order to get there in time for our final budget decision, that publication has to run starting tomorrow. That brings you have 62 days between now and the 4th. So it has to start tomorrow or you don't have time. That really just starts the 60-day probationary period in which the public can come and give feedback in regards to what that debt service is going to be. Between now and October 4th, when we have scheduled our October board meeting, which we would do final budget approval, at final budget approval or anytime before that, the board could take action on exactly how much debt you're going to issue. But let me back up. You can't make a debt decision until the 60 days is up. So by October 4th, then you would make that decision. How that conversation happens is how we receive feedback, whether it's people coming to public comment at the board meeting, whether it's them reaching out to you as commissioners, reaching out to staff. We're gathering that public input based on the notice they have in the publication about the intentions of the potential increase.
Okay, so then how is it that you can widen your area of gathering information? That's one of the things that we started with Lindenwood, which is of course a much smaller project, but people thought that they weren't, included in asked for their opinion. So if you're gathering information during the 60-day period, how are you going to invite that participation?
So
Okay. This is a public notice. This is a little different than public input, which is what we did with Island Park. And I think if we're talking about public input, I think we're only getting better and better at it. I think Island Park was a good good start for us. I think we've seen with the Island Park Pool project where people have had a lot of different ways they could provide input. I think we can do some of the same thing here. I think what Brock is talking about is what we are legally obligated to do in order to be able to take this debt. Am I speaking correctly, Brock?
That is correct.
But I think to Don's point, we also can, during this 60-day period, get more information about the other things. So for example, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but $28 million is going to finish off phase 1, our original scope, which will give us 1 sheet of ice, 4 courts, the 2 generators and 2 party rooms, correct?
2 community rooms.
Community rooms.
There's
Okay.
birthday party rooms and there's community rooms.
Okay, perfect. And so then if we go to 34 million, which we've discussed, wherever we could get a second sheet of ice and we could potentially get like pickleball courts. So in this period of time now, during these next 2 weeks, or 2 months, if we say, let's go with the 34, not knowing where we're necessarily going to land, now we can get more information, i.e. get contracts together for that, get the funding models together with the bank to get this stuff locked in, that these donations are set, and then take a survey down to the Brunsdale Park in the middle of the day and start talking to these people who are playing pickleball and find out who's going to utilize pickleball courts and how needed and wanted and everything that these pickleball courts are. And that helps us make our decision as to what we're going to ultimately take. Is that more of a statement than a question, but a validation that's yeah.
I mean, I think you could solicit input if so directed. Yeah, we could go out and reach out to.
Well,
There'll be
Hockey's
articles.
already been here and told us why they can get to 2 sheets, but we need to put those things into fruition. We got to get the proof on paper. Again, I'm not the finance guy here. That's $6 million is locked in. The contracts for their obligated ice time or whatever, that also says in there that they're not going to back off from any of the ice time that they have in the community anywhere. Like I said, we need the pickleball people to be at the table with the voice and use, not just speculation, if we're going to figure out what number we're going to land at.
That was one of the problems with the earlier survey that was done. It was only the people who were involved with the potential programs that were asked, rather than the general public. So I think that was something that we need to grow out of, just thinking about who the potential users are and get more into, what the whole city thinks about these matters.
Sure.
So I want to ask one last question just to make sure I'm crystal clear on this. $34 million of general obligation bonds as of today is 3.55 mils. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So if I'm scanning ahead here to agenda item number 6, the 4.55 is obviously more than $34 million. Right?
That is also correct, yes.
Okay. So with that said, I'm looking at agenda item 5, which was agenda item 4, the review and consider approval of initial resolution. So that's going in the paper in the morning. We're going to get a temperature from the public on it based on that, I would expect. And we have the ability to do all the things we can in our homework and otherwise between now and October to determine the scope, how much money we actually want to take. We have the ability today to use a smaller number that wouldn't match the paper, and that's okay too. But I'm going to at least get us going in the right direction here. And I move to approve the initial resolution for the issuance of general obligation park facility bond series 2023A in the amount of $34 million, which presently is 3.55 mils.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion?
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, just for the motion, it is series 2023B.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
on-
Just wanted to make sure we had the right one.
Yeah, on my paper it says A.
Okay.
Okay, so move to approve the initial resolution for the issuance of general obligation park facility bond series 2023B.
Okay, this is the discussion period.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make one other comment, maybe ask Brock. So after the 60 days, then the planning.
So we have a little conflict. Our agenda says 2023B and our memo says 2023A. And Brock informed me that the memo came from our bond attorney Shockley, John Shockley. So Vicky was correct on 2023A. So just note that.
So as it's been moved and seconded as series 2023A, we're okay.
Yep, as presented. Yep.
Okay, so I just wanted to make one more comment before we poll the board. So just the question to Brock. So we have the 60-day notice period. And after that, we have this published. And so we'll see what the reactions are at that time. But then we still have those remaining 10 months. Is that right? Or how long is it before we need to decide if and how we're going to use the funds, if we're going to use all of them, or if we're going to turn them down?
Well, once you approve your final budget, at that point, you will determine if you're going to take the funds and increase the mill levy. Okay, so that would happen in October.
October 4th.
You can then turn around and issue the debt at any point in time, generally up to a year after the resolution's been passed. But remember that you'll be collecting the revenue, so you'll want to have an expense then in the 2023 year to put that towards.
Yeah, and maybe to help answer I think we would want to know before October 4th what we're going to go forward with, because whatever we decide for the scope of the project, we need to initiate that schematic design phase of the project.
Yeah, so now would be, if this motion passes, our next steps are get clear understanding of cost of things, generators, courts, ice, whatever we need, what we're going to do, so we can make a sound decision in October.
And actually, I think that would be the September facilities meeting where we would have the scope fairly well detailed and laid out.
Correct. Good call, Jerry.
Yes, correct. So, we aren't really going to have 8 weeks. We're going to have 6 weeks and try to get all this figured out in 6 weeks. So.
And in all honesty, in the August facilities meeting, we should have some of this hammered out and have conversations and information so that we have time to vet it, absorb it, understand it, ask questions.
Very short period of time. Do you have any comments by legal counsel? Okay, thank you.
No news is good news from legal.
I'm not bond counsel, so.
All right, are we ready to poll the board?
Commissioner Dawson,
Oh, she's
Aye.
last. Oh, Dawson, yeah, sorry.
Commissioner Rostad,
Yes.
I believe Commissioner Hill has left the internet. So Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan. Thank you.
Hey, Dave
Yes?
or Don, I see that it looks like Doug Whitaker's on now. I don't know if he wants to share or he had anything else he wanted to add with the pool situation, or if we just want to keep moving forward.
Well, I think we can tell Mr. Whitaker that everything went all right, and unless anybody has any questions. Hearing none, I think we'll just continue forward. In talking with Brock today on how all this would play out, I believe he would like to take a 5 or 10 minute recess and try to prep everything for the budget, since the preliminary budget that was distributed has altered a little bit due to the 1 mil in the increase of 1 mil in the general fund. Is that correct, Brock?
That is correct. Because all the data that's in your board packet is different than what you now will be acting on in a preliminary budget.
So is it, what do we, Jeff, do we just need to call a recess or how do we do that?
Yeah, someone asked for this.
I'll request a recess. 10 minutes.
So here's the question. So we've got
Okay,
2
10-minute
elections, right?
recess.
So
Hey, Don and Dave, this is Jerry. I had some things come up here. I need to drop off unexpectedly here. Nothing serious, but just wanted to let you know I got to disconnect. So thanks for the meeting.
budget.
back of your packet, last pages, where it says Fargo Park District highlights budget, where we give the broad overview of the budget by category. Everybody have that page? Again, what you'll do there is under number 1, double I, mill levy rate, scratch 3693 and input 37.41.
It says 3841.
So I'm looking, yeah, so instead of 3841, it will say 3741. That eliminates that 1 mil, Vicky, that you addressed.
Yep, and 3.55.
Yep, and then instead of 455, it says 355, correct. And then you've already got, then the other change that would happen there is where it says general fund, 30,248,58. You want to change it to what we did earlier of 29,561,703. That's the same change we made in the preliminary budget summary. And then your total funds, because this is the key, your total funds then are $45,667,451. And that will get us to debt service on up to $34 million, a mill levy increase of 3.55 mills. General fund is staying the same, and we're only capturing the growth in the general fund valuation. Debt service is increased by what it costs to service the debt of 30 up to 34 mills, and then the grand total of those 3 funds.
What was the mill originally in there? What was that earmarked for in here? The mill that we're removing right now?
That general fund mill that we're removing now was, as we were trying to get to a total cost of scope of phase 2 of $47.7 million. We were short 4.7 million. So we put in a mill to offset what those costs would be. So if we, in order to get to everything that's projected in pre-design estimates on scope 2, it would have taken an additional general fund mill to close that gap. So it was for phase 2 of the project.
So we're not going to be able to do everything that we potentially talked about doing?
If we remove that mill, you can't do the total of the 47.7 unless you get additional private dollars. And when we say everything, Commissioner Deutsch, we're talking about 2 hockey,
2 ice sheets,
4 basketball, 6 pickleball, 3 generators, 2 party rooms.
2 community rooms.
If you do the whole 9 yards, it would be 47.7. And if you take out that general fund mill, you're going to be short $4.7 million, and you'd have to make some decisions about how you would recoup that or what you would do differently.
I don't know why we split hairs over these things. So Vicky, in your desire to not have this mill, what is your, where are you seeing that we're reducing the scope?
Did you hear that, Vicky? Okay.
3.55 mils gets us $34 million. I believe we can do a lot of different things, and I believe now's the time to determine who and what we can decide to partner with. I know that the $34 million doesn't include the hockey users' money, so that puts us at 40. And as we originally discussed, there was some cash that could be utilized if needed. There's debt service coming off that could also be utilized if needed. Those 3 things give us $15 million if needed. I'm not certain we need to do everything in this that's been proposed the other day. As in some of the conversations I've had, I don't know that we need pickleball there. I don't know that we want pickleball there. I don't know that we need a playground there. And so those are all the things we have to determine over the course of the next 60 days. Well, sooner than that. And that's, I'm not interested in raising the general fund mills. And so that's where the $34 million, I believe, is enough for us to make a determination on our next phase.
Okay.
Well, no, I just want to make a comment that, so we would need to decide on a scope prior to the final budget, so we can start working on schematic design phase and construction document phase. And until we get a scope set, we will have to basically include everything on design drawings, and then we'll have to make that decision.
If she says that that this doesn't include the $6 million that hockey's bringing to the table, that wipes out the 4.7 right there. As long as that $6 million is obligated, no?
No. So what Vicky is referencing is, if you look at total dollars available, so the scope at pre-design of everything was $47.7 million. If you look at dollars available, you'd have the 34 million potentially from the debt service. You would have 6 million potentially from the private users, that's 40. We've discussed that potentially we could put 3 million cash, so that's 43. So the difference between 47.7 and 43 is the 4.7. So that's why we then added the general fund mill, because what we were asked is show us a path home on all of that. So we put it together that way. So you're still short that 4.7 if you want every single item that's listed in the pre-design estimate.
And frankly speaking, the path home was ice and courts. So if we want to be very clear, the path home didn't add the generators, didn't add the pickleball, the rentable rooms, and the playground.
What is the definition of the path home? We wanted to finish the initial phase of the project,
Now,
which
I think we have a lot of homework to do in the next short period of time, where some of these things we need to have meetings about, discussions about. I want to know a little more about the generators. I want to understand, on what was given to us for the facilities meeting, it says generator $1 million. Well, I've now found out there's more than one generator, and that expense is wrong. And so I think those are all things that we need to determine. But the original intention of finding the path did not include these extra things that were brought up at the facilities meeting.
what getting home to what? The finishing the initial project that we scaled back on originally, which was one sheet, 4 more courts, the rooms and what else am I missing? And the generators, that was in our scope that we were trying to fundraise to. And then we scaled back to get to what we're at currently today in order to get a shovel in the ground. And now what path home? The path home that we
just discussed doing debt service, that's 3.55 mils. If you take that $34 million and you add in the $3 million of cash, the $6 million in debts that's coming off for debt service, the $6 million pledge from the hockey groups, those 3 things are $15 million. Plus 34 is $49 million.
So we already owe the staff $1 million, and we're going to take the 2 to 3 million that's there, plus we're going to start deciding projects for in the future that aren't even done, paid for yet, and we're going to pre-spend those before the staff even gets an opportunity to look at other projects?
Well, that's a decision you'll have to make. Do you want to use that money? Do you want to add in pickleball? Do you not want to add in pickleball? Do you want to add in courts? Do you not want to add in courts? Do you want to add in ice, not add in ice, generators? I mean, those are all the things we have to determine. So, right now where we're sitting, the determination was made in the last agenda item of 3.55 mils. So,
that was for the capacity of the bond.
Yeah, I think we need to be clear because it may feel like semantics, but it's how it works. What was decided in the last agenda item was $34 million of debt, not the mills, because those mills will be determined as a math problem once the debt is issued.
Yep. So right now, are you, Brock, or whoever, as far as presenting on the budget, are you planning on going through the rest of these highlights, or are you looking for any questions we have, or are you looking for us to make a determination on what we are passing the budget at for total capacity?
I guess any or all of those are an option. We can go through the highlights. We've presented what's been changed because this was a moving target as of the last agenda item. So if the board is interested in us going through this highlight page, which we covered at the facilities and budget meeting, we can do that. The only changes on here from the facilities budget meeting are those items we just talked about for the debt service and the mill levy. But I guess what's the desire of the board? We can walk through each of these highlights, or you know what the total budget is and what the recommendation is that we would be presenting if that's the decision of a majority of the board with the mills. Where the mills come into play is now because we identify in our budget what our mill increase is. And that's what we request of the county.
Well, I went through a number of these last week with some of the staff, and I'm comfortable with the highlights and the information in here. So I'm prepared to move forward.
And there appears to be at least some question about the general fund mill, and I guess however you guys resolve that, but I do feel it's my responsibility to state, and we have time to do this, but when we talk about the fiscal ability of phase 2 of this project, if we're going to maximize our debt and pre-spend anything that's coming off the books for debt, but we're not going to raise any general fund mills to operate, we've really tied the operational hands on both ends. We've eliminated all debt capacity, and we've pre-committed dollars that aren't even available yet. So I think as we think through this, we have to consider that moving forward.
Okay, let's say we don't use either of those pieces of funding. As it stands, we'd have $34 million of new debt, or of the general bonds we're issuing.
Correct.
And then we'd have any private money, which we are anticipating $6 million from at least 2 user groups total.
Correct.
Which put at 40 million, which from the discussion points for phase 2 that we were presented at the facilities meeting, the scope of the project that includes everything that was brought up at the facilities meeting, ice, hard courts, pickleball, generator, the range of that is 28 to 40 million. So that tells me we're there.
I'd just like to clarify, those were the numbers that were sent out to the facility budget meeting based on my best guesstimate. We did receive those updated numbers the afternoon of the committee meeting, and that's where we got those new numbers. I guess I could maybe offer one solution here, kind of do the same thing we're doing with, the bond protest period is where we set that capacity at 34 million. We could do the same thing with our preliminary budget. If we include this one mill, we can always go down upon further investigation over the next 6 weeks, but you can't go up.
And at minimum, we could keep that mill, we could purpose that mill for the mill that we took for the bridge loan as well, to get that for deferred maintenance and everything else that the staff fought to get back because they needed it in the first place.
Yeah,
Correct?
doesn't it look like there was one point that you mentioned where it went from 4 million to 3 million. Was that for parks and maintenance?
Yeah, so that is, the impact of the general fund mill increase that was in your budget proposal, we embedded that $715,000 into equipment and maintenance because it really is going toward a capital expenditure. And so because it was going to be paid for out of the general fund, much like the bridge loan we would be doing with the pool project, we embedded it in that maintenance area. If we take that general fund mill out, that's 715. That's why that went down. And it went down to the amount that our team and Dave Beats worked on in the original preliminary budget, which was to facilities, down to that 4.5 million. So we worked with Dave Beats on that. He knew that that was really a number put in there to offset this increase that was dedicated to phase 2.
So that mill basically makes right by what you would essentially give you that mill back that you are missing.
Yeah, so
Repeat what he said because I can hear you very clearly, but I have a hard time hearing Don and Jerry.
got it. So Joe said that in essence, if we stayed with that 1 mil increase this year, it would give back that mill that's dedicated to the bridge loan. And yes, a portion of that would come back. However, what you have to keep in mind is that's really spread throughout the district. That's a general operating mill. So some of it might go in equipment and maintenance, some of it might go to salary, some of it might go all over, right? It's embedded in there. And remember, if you put it in and you keep it in, then it's a pure replacement, but that's if you don't need it for whatever phase 2 is. I think that's the complicating factor. And I think that's where we get to this point of, because we're bound by a 60-day deadline, we're trying to figure out what we should do with our mill levy, and there's more questions than answers.
I'd just like to ask Dave Beats about the perspective of what your presentations had been previously to get the additional funding in place that your departments were seeking, and what that significance is in terms of that 1 mil.
So one moment, did you hear that, Vicki?
No.
The question is to Dave Beats, what has been his presentation in trying to secure appropriate dollars for operational maintenance and capital projects, et cetera? I think if I paraphrase that correctly.
Yes.
Donnie? Yep.
And if I'm understanding this correctly, Madam Chair, the goal of the mill that's been talked about that has already been, redirected, let's say, towards the bridge loan to phase 1 of this project. The initial goal of that mill was to help us out operationally and tackle some of our larger deferred maintenance items. Now, the first year that we had that available to us, the commission decided that we were going to put those dollars towards the Lindenwood Road project, which is something that was needed. We went through that project. We completed it last year. And I think everybody would agree that it turned out very well, even though we had some challenges along the way. Moving forward, that mill or those dollars now have been committed towards phase 1 of this project. And the commission, the staff, we can try to work in the future when more private dollars come in, we can try and recoup that mill back to the staff, which I think is what Dr. Joe has been alluding to several times tonight, which I appreciate, because from a staff perspective, speaking on behalf of the team that I represent here, that $715,000 in today's dollars is very important to us. We just pared down our budget that we're talking about today by several $1 million of things that our groups feel they need. Now, we don't take that lightly. We try very hard to make sure that a need is a need and a want is a want, and we do our homework. But to answer the question, I believe that, as I understand it, that mill would come back to us at some point and help us out with our operational and deferred maintenance costs. And currently, we made the decision, a year ago when we decided to go ahead with phase 1, that those dollars would be included in the bridge loan concept so we could get a shovel in the ground and take advantage of the costs as they were in that given moment of time.
So
Clarification on this. So when we started the budget process, there was going to be no increase in the mills, no increase in the general fund mills, we were going to stick to 33.86. And since the budget meeting a week ago, we have added a mill in, yes. So in the board packet, a general fund mill was added, as well as what would be required to move forward for bonding, to do some sort of phase two. But where I'm lost is, how did that mill get added in? And what was it specifically added in for? Because earlier in our conversation when we were discussing phase two, it was my impression it was going specifically to the sport complex. So somewhere between the facilities meeting and the board packet, we threw a mill, we raised the general fund mill for the budget.
Yeah, so I can answer that for you, Vicky. So you are correct. Upon original submission of the budget, when we brought it to the Budget Committee and Facilities meeting last Wednesday, there was no increased mills, neither general fund nor capital debt service. We were simply proceeding with the valuation increase we got, and we did not have phase two on the table in the preliminary budget. As a result of the Facilities Committee and a discussion and presentation that said we need to do something for phase two, anything that ranged from 2 sheets of ice and nothing else to 2 sheets of ice and basketball to everything under the sun. So how that general fund mill got added is the same way the 3.55 got added. We took the pre-design estimates for every aspect of phase two. The pre-design estimates were $47.7 million. To get there, we took the 34 million, which is the 355 million increase. We took the assumed 6 million from the user groups and the assumed 3 million from the general fund budget, and that left us short $4.7 million. So to provide the board with full capacity and flexibility, we decided to, if we needed to get to 47.7, we needed to add a mill in the general fund because we had no more capacity in the debt service fund. It had to come from the general fund. So that's why that was put in there. It was purely put in there to cover what is a presumed $47.7 million of phase two of this project.
Presuming that we're doing the entire scope of the project at 47.7 million, even though the numbers that were given to the board a week ago were 28 to 40 million, and we just decided to, in your words, we decided to add that mill to the general fund and presumed that that's what we were going to want to do.
Yeah, I would say that we were directed to by the Facilities and Budget Committee to find a path home for phase two of the project. And when we secured new estimates from McGough that were different than what they provided us back when this whole process started, that's where that total of 47.7 came from. And you're right, that number was whatever the number you stated, 28 to 40, whatever that is. But that 28 to 40 was, the difference there is 1 sheet to 2 sheets.
Yeah, 28 to 40. But what you just said now is 47.7, $7.7 million more than you proposed last week. Also, when you brought us the path forward, it included the cash, it included the debt service, it included the private commitments from the hockey group. And now when I say those things, it's as if I'm saying a dirty word. So where I'm at right now is that the information we were given and presented a week ago and where we're at today are not matching. And it's very difficult to make decisions when I don't understand where these things have come from. And in my mind, it would have been helpful to know what you just explained to me and have dealt with this before we're at this point of determining our budget. So I just want one last thing with clarification. So the 1 mil that you want to raise in the general fund is for phase 2 of the sports complex. It is not for other things within the park district. Is that correct?
It is correct with the exception of the phrase that I want to raise in the general fund. I think we are on record with our proposal saying we should not fast track this and we should study it further. But we were told to find a path home for all of these things. And so that had to be embedded in there to get to that total dollar figure.
So the 1 mil increase would specifically be for phase 2. It would not be, as Joe was saying earlier, to help out the staff and take care of other things in the park district.
That mill will, that would never come back to? Beats just said that it will.
No, I think we're confusing the two. The mill, as I understand it, that Dr. Joe is talking about is what we agreed to commit towards phase 1. This additional mill that we're talking about, that we're bantering about now, is to get us everything and all things that are now known to us as phase 2. That doesn't mean that we're going to accept all of that. That just means that if we were going to get to everything that we've now had firmed up numbers on over the course of the last several days, all the things that we've identified in the past, that's the cost of it. It's north of that $47 million. So the additional fund is what Brock was trying to say is we're showing an option that we can get all of those things if that's what we choose. And I believe the message, at least the way that I understand it, was we wanted to provide the most flexibility to the commission in this next 60 days. And by doing that, we as a staff thought that, okay, well, we're going to do the best that we can and provide you the information of the 3.55 mils of the debt service ability and debt capacity. And then in order to get home with the refined numbers we received in the total dollars, we would then go into another general fund mill of operating mill, if that's what you want to call it. And so I think maybe we're confusing the two. The mill that we committed previously for phase 1 is what Dr. Joe has been talking about getting back to the staff, which we would love to have. This new mill is just to allow us the maximum flexibility if we are to choose all things in phase 2 of the sports complex.
Yes, so taking this mill does not resolve giving back the mill that we took from you in, not my words, but this doesn't solve that previous.
No. But if we don't end up spending all of them.
This general mill, raising this 1 mill would be for phase 2. This would not take care of general regular operations for the park district, correct?
If we need it for end up needing it for the full scope, but if we don't need it for the full scope, it could stay on to pay that back per se, as opposed to the other monies that we've approved earlier. If you don't use those, I mean, those would have to be earmarked specifically for the sports complex. So take them for the project for the sports complex, or don't take them. But if this mill is taken, it could be repurposed for that purpose if it's not needed over here.
That is correct.
Okay, so I am not interested in raising the general fund mill by an additional mill. I don't know where anyone else is. Well, I think I know where Jared's at, but you know, we now have 3 of us. Do we need is Jeff still here?
Yep.
Do we need 3 people to vote?
No, you have a quorum, so you just need
Do
a
we need a
majority.
majority?
Quorum. And Don, especially given the small numbers, Don is able to second the motion. And I mean, another consideration is this is the preliminary budget. You can't go above the preliminary budget, but you can always go back down. And so one consideration is being that you only have 3 of the 5. You could add the 1 mil, and this conversation, which would be great to have Jerry on and great to have Aaron as a part of, but unfortunately life happens, can get flushed out before the final budget needs to be finalized.
So to give them that opportunity and to still move forward here now, I could make a motion to approve the budget as originally presented in the board packet.
No, well,
Yes.
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 Second. Okay, motion passes.
No. We gotta have discussion, then we gotta poll everybody.
Did you hear the motion, Vicky?
Yes, I heard the motion. So the motion is to original what's printed on our agenda item number 6.
Which again is just the potential maximum. And so we can have that discussion amongst everybody and end up taking whatever it is that we're going to take. But that gives everybody an opportunity to actually vote on the dollar amount.
All right, so let me just go back and clarify. So I believe what you just stated is accurate, but I want to make sure with all the pen and scratch marks and everything we've done. So yes, the budget in your packet as originally presented was a total increase of 4.55 mills, which included 1 general fund mill, 3.55 debt service mills, for a total budget of, please hold, $46,346,606.
So since we're in discussion, this now puts us at the absolute max. We cannot take any more money until the size of our community, the size of our values go up.
You cannot take any more general fund bonds, correct?
So I am opposed to this. I don't think we need to raise the general fund. I think that this is a good time to challenge the community and say, hey, here's some opportunities of what we can put into the sports complex and give them some opportunity to be part of it. You know, we go back to wanting to get the private funds in here. You know, we have 2 groups who are interested in doing that. It's significant dollars. And I think we need to actively and publicly challenge the community to, if you want pickleball, if you want a party room, if you want some of these other things, if you want courts, I mean, let's go to those user groups and see what they've got. But I am not in favor of that additional general fund mill.
Okay, so, end of discussion. Do we need to poll the board?
Commissioner Dawson?
You got to repeat whatever Don just said.
Oh, Don asked to pull the board.
Yep.
But I think we should repeat the motion.
Is that Jeff?
Yeah, the original motion was to approve the preliminary 2023 budget as originally presented, which would have had an increase of the mills of 4.55 mills for a total mill levy rate of 38.41 mills.
Yes, and I did second that.
And last piece of discussion before we move forward with the vote, I just want to say, and in a worst case scenario, whatever we decide to do with the other monies that would have to be for the sports complex or whatever, if in a worst case scenario, we ended up, scaling all that back dramatically, and this mill then would obviously not be necessary, we could repurpose this mill, unlike any of that other monies. We could repurpose this mill back to the mill that we put in the bridge loan to cover the needs of the staff to get us back to where we were with them in the first place.
Did you hear that, Don? Sorry, Vicky.
I heard it.
Okay.
Poll the board.
Commissioner Dawson?
Nay.
Commissioner Deutsch?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye. Motion passes.
That concludes our items, Madam President.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Adjourned.
All right, thank you, Vicky. You still there? Okay, thank you. She said, thank you.